Hello, welcome to the Rhythm of Business podcast. I am your host, Dr. Terry Daniels, and I have as my guest today Jon Foti, who is the CEO, founder of Operation Song and organization. He'll share with us. I think it's so unique and amazing with what they're doing. And so, Jon, we're so excited to have you on the podcast. And if you can just get us started and tell us a little bit about who you are, Operation Song, and more about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll start out too. So I am the CEO. I actually started here recently. I've been in the veterans nonprofit sector for years, but just started with Operation Song in January. So I am the CEO, but I don't think I ever could have founded this
Okay,
organization. I'm
okay.
not as incredible enough to do so. And that's a great segue into Operation Song and the roots and history of this organization. Operation Song was founded in 2012 by a really famous and talented, Grammy Award and nominated winner by the name of Bob Regan.
Mhm.
Bob has number one hits with Keith Urban, Billy Ray Cyrus, Trisha Yearwood.
Wow.
He was very active 90s, early 2000s, and then got involved with armed forces tours through the Department of Defense and would
Mhm.
travel the world with the DoD in order to bring music to troops deployed across the world.
Wow.
And in the process of that, he learned how powerful veterans and their families' stories are.
Wow.
He started to personally document the stories of veterans through the power of songwriting and give veterans the experience and platform to be able to share their story. And and then formed the organization. And so since 2012, Operation Song has written over 2,000 songs with veterans and their families and has really moved the needle nationwide in terms of bridging the gap between the stories of veterans and their families and the civilian population. Because,
Wow.
especially in the transition sector of, between the civilian world and the DoD, there's always this reference to the military civilian gap, right? And how do
Mhm.
you help veterans transition from the Department of Defense, whatever branch they're in, into the civilian sector? And Operation Song feels very passionately about educating Americans on the plight of the military and veteran family in hopes that they can continue to support our veterans and service members on the backside of their service. And so Operation Song, right now we write about 200 songs a year with veterans and their families. And then we share those songs with as many people as are willing to listen.
That is an amazing story. So as the CEO of an organization like this, how do you keep the passion and drive alive for the people that are on your team and that help you with this? How do you as CEO keep this passion alive?
It starts with the why. And so that's actually what's interesting. I love for-profit work, of course. And so anyone that's listening in the for-profit sector, right? The really only difference between the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector is at the end of the day where the money goes, right? So of course, in the for-profit sector, the goal is to make as much money as possible and to give that back to the owners,
Absolutely.
investors, shareholders, whatever the case. And at the end of the day, the nonprofit sector is similar in the sense that its goal is to make an incredible amount of money, but so that you can solve the problem that your nonprofit is trying to solve, right? So that that money flows back to the constituents that you have an obligation to serve. And so, of course, nonprofits don't take distributions. That money
Mhm.
goes back in. The only other real major difference is that in the for-profit sector, you can generally teach anyone to do anything, right? Of course, there's different criteria for working in certain industries, but in the for-profit sector, you can generally teach someone who, when, where, how. But in the nonprofit sector, we focus mostly on the why.
Okay.
And when I hire in the nonprofit sector, when I lead teams in the nonprofit sector, I'll often say, I can teach you all of those other things. I can teach you to do the what, the who, the when, the where. I
Mhm.
can't teach you the why. And so if you're going to work for a nonprofit organization, if you're going to start a nonprofit, even if you donate to a nonprofit, you're likely driven by the why. And the why is typically the problem statement, which
Mm.
is very similar to the for-profit sector in the sense that your problem statement is what drives your revenue. In the nonprofit sector, your problem statement is what drives your mission, the
Yes.
thing that you're trying to fix in this world because it needs fixed. And people are donating to you because of the why. the why they care, the why that thing needs to be solved, why your organization needs to exist. And so to answer your question in a very long way, the why is the most important thing that you can do. And that goes to finding team members that are passionate about serving veterans, that
Mhm.
care about, the impacts of music on veterans and their families, the power of songwriting, and then employing them in a way in which is rewarding and moves the needle on what we are trying to do, which is tell the story of every veteran and their family to every American.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and it is tough, right? Like that's the only thing I can't help someone with is the why. Like you kind of have to bring the why with you every day to work, or to operate on our board, to be an advisor for the organization. I can teach you everything else, right? I can teach you how to fundraise. I can teach you how to work in a CRM. We
Mhm.
can teach someone how to host events, and to some extent, you can even teach people the process of songwriting, the process of music, the process of pairing with veterans. But I can't make you care about a veteran and their family, right? That has to come from within.
That
But
is
I
so
try.
cool. That is so cool. I could talk to you. I'm telling you, I could talk to you all day. I'm just telling you, John.
Yeah.
So think about this though. Here's what's intriguing me. I'm just listening to you, and obviously a very talented young man with great skill set, the ability to teach these pieces of the puzzle. If you think about just entrepreneurship in general and leadership in general, you seem to be following a passion and a why. How do you help people that are going into this entrepreneurial space or looking for new opportunities for where to take their careers to follow their dream, follow their why? Where did that come from for you, to follow a dream, to do something that makes a difference in someone else's life? How did you get there?
Yeah. I actually might be a bad person to help with that because I kind of and my story is a bit odd in the sense that I would probably still be a helicopter pilot in the Army if I could.
Okay.
At the age of 27, when I was graduating from a course down in Fort Rucker, Alabama, now Fort Novosel, Alabama, I got randomly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
And it kind of took everything from me. So up until the age of 27, I had only ever done two things. I had flown helicopters and trained to lead troops in combat, and had the opportunity to lead troops and fly helicopters in combat. Type 1 diabetes takes both of those away. So
Yeah.
as a type 1 diabetic, you can't wear the uniform, unfortunately, and you can't even be a helicopter pilot. Now there's been a few changes. Luckily, FAA pilots can get certified to fly commercially, even though they have type 1, but at the time you could not. And so I kind of had to reinvent myself. And I went back to the only thing that I ever felt really comfortable doing, which was serving. And so I had the opportunity of serving in the House of Representatives through a program called the Wounded Warrior Fellowship, where you get to be employed by the House, work on House issues for the constituency and the community you live. And that led to a CEO role for the largest veterans nonprofit in the state of Oklahoma, called the Dale K. Graham Veterans Foundation. And then that led to a CEO role here at Operation Song. And in both the House, at the Dale Graham Foundation, and here at Operation Song, I essentially get to feel the same feeling as wearing the Army uniform every day, which is service,
We're just service.
working and acting on behalf of something bigger than yourself. And it is really hard to help other people find that passion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, especially, if you are in the for-profit sector, it is likely that you are not going to find the thing you are most passionate about until you've failed at many other things that turns out you're not passionate about, right? And and so sometimes it's easier to rush to failure, learn that lesson, and pivot to something else.
Yeah.
That might be my best recommendation, even though it's kind of a bad one.
But no, I think again, life will always throw us a curve, right? And how we recover, how we make a decision to move forward. I often say times that dejection, rejection, any of those things will always give us direction.
Yeah.
And so I think we get direction out of situations and circumstances. So you've really taken that another step.
Yeah. And I will say, and I'll leave it on this, most people do know what they're passionate about, but they're too
Mhm.
scared to do that thing. And in the process of interviewing, I've actually seen this quite a bit. And I've hired a lot of people in the nonprofit sector over the years, especially at the Dale Graham Foundation. And I would always interview many of the candidates, right? It's kind of like that last step before we brought them on the team. And I only ever had one question. I would go into these interviews, sometimes, upper management positions, and I would only ask them one question. I would ask them, if you could do anything, right? If money wasn't a problem for you anymore, you didn't have to make money, you could live anywhere, what would you do with the rest of your time, right? Like, where would you work? How would you work? And then I just kind of let them fumble through an answer.
Mhm.
A lot of times people haven't thought of that question, or maybe they're confused at first, and I'll rephrase it for them like, okay, hey, you still live in Oklahoma City. I give you $100 million. What do you do for the rest of your life? Because you're probably not going to take this job. If you
Yeah,
are, that's great. And let's talk about that,
yeah,
your
yeah,
passion for serving veterans. But it's likely you have something you would like to do with your time if you didn't have to work. And I'm
yeah,
really interested to know what that thing is so that I, as an executive here, your future boss, can help you get to that. Right.
yes,
And people always, they'll say travel, they'll say, hey, I want to go this place and see this thing. I'd like to buy this house or whatever. And I'm like, great. Once you've done that, right? Let's say you've traveled the entire world,
yeah,
you've spent $40 million, right? You got $60 million left to live the rest of your life with. Then what do you do with your time? Because eventually you're going to settle down, you're going to get bored, you're going to want to do something with your
yeah,
time. And that's when they open up. They're like, oh, I'd love to open a sanctuary for horses. I'd love to
yeah,
start a nonprofit that pairs veterans with service dogs. I'd really love to go to nursing school. I've always been interested in law. One kid, and this was interesting, we were hiring him for a tech role. He was like, I'd really love to stream video games. I was like, you can do that right now. Right? I was like, I mean, you're qualified for this job. I'd love to hire you, but just so you know, you can do that today, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
yes, you might not make money doing that today, but there's thousands and thousands of people on twitch.tv who are making a full-time living streaming video games that they're passionate about.
yeah, yeah,
And so you should pursue that thing. And I'm pretty sure he's a streamer online today.
yeah,
And it's just he needed someone to tell him that like it's okay to follow that thing that you want to do,
yeah,
even though you are likely to fail. Like
yeah,
it's okay, you
yeah.
know. So
True.
you've probably learned by now I give long answers to short
No,
questions.
no. I mean, I really am fascinated with you as the person because you are it just really impressive. I mean, really, at a young man in your role, serving others is, and I've heard that word multiple times throughout the conversation. That service hard. It's hard to find these days, and I think you're just a gift to this organization and your organizations and where you've been. And if you think about, in this world of leadership, in this world of trying to run an organization, how do you find that rhythm so that what you're producing 2,000 songs a year and, you know, telling the stories of these veterans, how do you find that rhythm where everybody is on the same page and they're all seeking to serve in the similar hearts and minds? How did you find that rhythm in your organization?
A great schedule, I will say. There's the macro of that, and then of course there's the micro, and the micro is intensely more complicated than the macro, especially in the nonprofit sector, right?
Mhm.
Because every organization, for profit, nonprofit, you might go in the year with a budget, you might go in the year with an understanding of your strategic plan. But of course, success is in the details. Success is in the operation and execution portion. But I've always had great success by, pillaring out the major components of things that have to happen. And that's no different here at Operation Song. It was even true, for the House of Representatives when I worked there. But you have to find the pillars of your organization that have to succeed and then focus on those things every week and find time on the calendar with your team to specifically and intentionally work on each one of those pillars so that the business continues to have a roof. In the nonprofit sector, it's actually really simple in the sense that, and I give these pillars to other organizations that I know for a fact have run with them. But in every organization, you have people, you have programs, you have finances, you have development, and you have the board. And
Mhm.
so as a nonprofit executive, right, if you're wanting to start a nonprofit, those are I don't know what your mission is. You're right. You might be trying to build wells in Africa. You might be trying to end homelessness in your local community. You might be trying to serve veterans. Your organization has those 5 pillars.
Mhm.
You have
Absolutely.
people, programs, finances, development, and the board. If you
Absolutely.
touch each one of those things every week and drive the narrative forward for the team that these are the pillars of the organization, and my calendar is built around improving each one of these things every week, then it's really hard to fail other than, you can get some bad luck every now and then. But generally, those 5 pillars apply to every single veterans nonprofit in the country. If you have great people, you have great programs, you manage and maintain your finances, you consistently develop the organization with new donors, new stakeholders, and you maintain a strong relationship with your board and continually churn and grow your board so that your network is expanding, then your organization can't fail, other
Yeah.
than a couple bouts of bad luck here and there. I'm
Wow.
not gonna,
Wow. I mean, those you're exactly right, and I'll tell you a little bit here after we finish the interview. I mean, I used to run a nonprofit, so
Yes.
for those 5 are exactly what they are, right? So that's pretty cool. Where do you see Operation Song going? How do you grow it? Where you go from here?
So our vision is basically an end state to our mission. And I talk a lot about this with my board and my team. And as I help other nonprofits, especially in the veterans nonprofit sector, I drive home these 2 things because it's the biggest mistake that I see organizations making is that they'll have a mission statement, but they don't have a vision statement.
Mm-hmm.
Or their vision statement is basically a regurgitated version of their mission statement.
Absolutely.
They're identical and they mean nothing if they're identical.
Yeah.
And so our mission is to serve and empower veterans and their families through the power of songwriting. And
Yes.
what that really means is that we take professional hit Nashville songwriters and we pair them in songwriting sessions with veterans and their families, produce a song, and then give that song to the veteran and their family and put that song in our catalog and try and share it with the entire world so that they understand the story of that veteran and their family. And so the power of the song is 2 ways, right? It serves the veteran and their family, and it serves the nation by educating them on the sacrifices of veterans and military service members. Our vision is to do that until we've written with every single veteran in the country and we've told every story from every military family there is in the country to every American so that they understand and know the sacrifices of veterans and their family. And that kind of goes back to bridging the gap between the civilian world and the military world so that those things are unison once again. And I don't know if they've ever been perfectly unison, but there have been periods of American history where the gap wasn't as divided.
Mm-hmm.
And it is severely divided now, unfortunately. And I'm not wishing another world conflict, but it sometimes does take a world conflict for Americans to remember how many actual service members there are in this country still fighting for their freedom and how
Yes.
many veterans out there are living with the wounds of war because of that service, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so sometimes war is a reminder of that, even if those things are still taking place every day. Operation Song has a platform to both serve veterans and serve Americans simultaneously through the power of song. And our vision is to do that until we've served every veteran. And then we plan to close
Yeah.
shop.
Wow.
But there's 18 million veterans and we've only written 2,000 songs. So we have like 16.99 to go.
What a goal. What a goal. I mean,
And
what
so
mission.
yeah, so that is our vision. Our vision is to continue to grow and scale and fundraise and perform songs and write songs and network with veterans and serve each one until every veteran has the ability to tell their story through songwriting. And
Wow.
and 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 though it is challenging to measure, we would love to be able to try and educate every veteran on the sacrifices of veterans and their
Well,
family.
let's do it. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, so
Sign me up to help you do
if you're a veteran and you're
it.
listening,
I'm not a veteran, but
write your song. Yeah,
you know, that is a beautiful, because I only know my father's story because he
yeah.
was a Korean War veteran. But
Mhm.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So what's cool about our program is that technically you would qualify. So all veterans and their dependents, spouses, children, are eligible to write a song within our program. And some of my favorite songs are about fathers and mothers that have served. And so you could write a song about your dad's experience in the Korean War, or his experience after coming home from war, or your experience growing up knowing that, he served in war and told you stories of war. We have a lot of incredible stories that have gone like that, and songs that have been written like that over the years.
But you know what? Again, as you say that, and I know I'm in an interview right now, but if I were to do that, I would say the silent song.
Yeah,
That would be the name of the song, the silent song.
that's a great title.
I know because my dad went, I mean, he was very close with it, even though
Yeah.
we knew a few things. I could talk about, as you said, growing up with him, but it really is the silent song.
Yeah.
So you can steal that and use it somewhere because I probably won't write it. But the
Oh,
silent
and
song,
Korea is the forgotten war,
it
so it
is
would make
it's the
sense.
forgotten war. The silent song is what came to mind as soon as you said that I could do this. I'm like, okay, I might need to talk to you, John.
Yeah.
Last question. As you think about people that might listen to this interview that may be in leadership, going in entrepreneurship, really stepping into a new space, what advice would you give to someone who is maybe tepidly stepping into it, or they may be hesitating to take on these challenges, to serve, to get involved, to step out, to take on stronger leadership roles? What would be your advice to them to step out?
Ooh, it's kind of morbid.
Okay.
It's kind of sad advice. I like to help people set expectations. I always like to remind people that it's going to be really hard. Like there's a reason this entrepreneurial effort that you're about to take on is going to be lucrative. It's because it's going to be hard.
Yes.
It is going to be challenging. And that is likely why you're wanting to do it. If it was easy, someone else would have already done it. Google would have already swooped in by now, absorbed all that profit, and moved
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Same thing for the nonprofit sector. If it was easy, that problem would have probably already been solved, and the nonprofit that solved that problem closed up shop and moved on,
Mhm.
right? It is going to be really challenging. And so, if you know that going in, right when it gets challenging, your first instinct isn't to quit. Your first instinct isn't to be like, well, this isn't going to work. I've divested, right? I've got clients who aren't paying invoices. I've got employees that aren't showing up to work, right?
Mhm.
I've got donors that are backing out of
Yeah.
donations, right? Like if you know it's going to be challenging going into it because you're trying to solve a problem that the market currently doesn't have a solution for,
Yes.
then you know you're going to have to go in there and work your tail off and bust your butt, and you're going to struggle, you're going to sacrifice, and it's going to be really hard. And so
Mhm.
don't let like social media and the world tell you that life is going to be easy and you're entitled to this or that. Like, no, you're going to work your butt off and you're going to reap the reward of that on the backside of your effort, but it's going to be really challenging in the process, right? I used to help flight school students as they were starting flight school because I was at Rucker for a long time. At the very end of my time in the Army, and I would help flight school students kind of like get their head wrapped around the challenge that they're about to take part in.
Mhm.
Because from the moment you show up at U.S. Army Flight School, it's many, many months before you actually step foot in a helicopter. Because you have
Okay.
all these other required trainings that you have to get through, all of these other processes that you've got to take part in. So you have a little free time at the beginning, just enough free time to get really nervous about the actual hard part that's coming up.
Yeah.
And I always remind them it is going to suck. Like it's going to be the hardest thing that you've ever done, but thousands of people have gone through it before you. And if you stay on the path and work really hard and don't quit the moment it starts getting hard, like you're going to graduate, you're
Yeah.
going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right. That in fact, I would remind them your graduation day is already on our calendar. Right? You're like, we have all of the graduations mapped out for like 2 years. The only thing you have to decide is whether or not you're going to be there or not.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and it's the same thing in business, right? All of the future clients that you haven't even met yet are going to give millions of dollars to these
Someone.
vendors in
Yeah.
order to solve this problem they have in their business. The only question you have to decide is your business going to be around the day that lead pops up?
Yes. Yes.
And you have to make it to that day, which is the hardest part,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And so if you can remember how challenging it's almost like someone signing up for a marathon and then they hit that 20-mile mark and they're like, wait, I didn't realize it was going to get this hard at the 20-mile mark. Everyone knows it's going to get that hard at the 20-mile
Yeah,
mark.
yeah, everybody knows.
Right. So you can't quit now. Like you
Yeah,
knew that this was going to be hard. There's a reason not every single American is running marathons every day.
absolutely.
You signed up for the marathon because it was going to be hard. Right.
Absolutely.
And so don't forget that. It's very too often that I see people quit. In the nonprofit sector, it happens all the time
Yeah.
because people start nonprofits because they're passionate about something they see in their community that they
Mhm.
don't think should exist
Yeah.
or that should exist. And they start the nonprofit, they start working on it, and the very first thing they typically hit and run into is that it's really hard to fundraise. It's hard to convince other people to care about the thing that you care so much about.
Absolutely.
And so the moment fundraising gets hard, they quit.
Mhm.
And that's why the vast majority of nonprofits fail every year. Even in the veterans nonprofit sector, that's exceptionally true. There's
Mhm.
47,000 military and veterans nonprofits in America registered to the IRS. Most of them have already failed or are in the process of failing. And it's because when that thing gets hard, whether it's programming or fundraising, sometimes board work, people quit. But if you know that going into it, then you're good. It's actually interesting in the podcast sector as well too. What's the statistic? Like only 5 or 10% of all podcasters ever make it to 20 episodes. So if you can
Absolutely.
make it past 20 episodes, you're already in a very, very small group of people that have fought through that sector, of pain and suffering, right? And so go into any venture, especially entrepreneurial, that is going to be hard. Keep that mindset and you're going to be fine. In fact, if
Yeah.
things start getting too easy, something is wrong. One of your employees is lying to you. One of your vendors is lying to you.
Yeah.
Something is wrong if everything is that easy.
But you asked, I mean, that is an awesome question to, at the end of it all, that vendor's going to spend that money, that client's going to spend that money. The only question is, will you be there?
Right.
Or we're going to have the graduation date. The question is, will you be there?
Mhm.
What a message
Yeah. I
a
used to, I
potential
used to tell
leader.
that to law school students. I would give classes on DA law, just quick little seminars to veterans at the University of Oklahoma Law School.
Mhm.
And I would remind them that there too. I'd be like, yeah, I understand. Obviously, I've never been through law school, but I can imagine it's really, really hard.
Mhm.
But you know that they already know your exact graduation day, right? Like
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
know your
you know
graduation.
that. Yeah.
The only thing they don't know is which one of you are going to be on stage. You decide that, right?
Yeah.
And so they know a bunch of you are going to make it through this process. You have to decide whether or not you're going to be there.
What
And
a
it's great for visualization, for people that are visual.
what a great message, man. That is powerful. That's worth the interview, me, my friend. Again, Jon, thank you so much for taking time to share. I am well past 25 episodes. Uh, and so thank you so much for sharing. And to the audience, this is Jon Foti. He is the CEO of Operation Song. What an amazing service they provide to tell the stories of veterans across the country, across the world, who have served our country so valiantly. So, Jon, thank you so much for what you're doing to your organization. We certainly want you to succeed at the highest level because it serves all of us. So, again, thank you so much for just sharing. It's
Thank
amazing.
you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. To the audience, this is Dr. Terry Daniels. Thank you for coming and listening to another episode of the Rhythm of Business podcast. We hope you come back and listen to us again in another future episode. Thanks so much and have an awesome, awesome day.